Well, good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, General Keith Kellogg joins us at 4 o'clock. We'll talk about the latest news. American troops injured in the Middle East by attacks from Iran, and what's going to happen next there. General Kellogg will tell us what he thinks. Senator Ron Johnson joins us today at 4:30. We'll get into all of these huge national security issues. Also, the fact that Joe Biden has been on the take. It's a $200,000 check. We need to discuss some of that in detail from his brother, Jim. Curtis Houck will be here at 5 o'clock from Newsbusters. We talk about the media and its lack of coverage of the anti-Semitism of the left. And Margot Cleveland joins us at 5:30 from The Federalist. We'll dig deeper into that money flowing to the Biden family. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. What do you think of this big development today?
Sir, if you wish to assume this awesome responsibility, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter. So help you God?
I do, so help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker Mike Johnson, now Speaker of the House, the congressman from Louisiana, succeeding after weeks of not knowing who was going to take the gavel. Mike Johnson is the guy now. And I've got to say, man, out of all of the available options here, this seems like a good one. This seems like a very good one. I want to take you through some of the details of his biography, where he scores on a number of issues, what he believes in, what he stands up for. And I think you'll be very encouraged. Mike Johnson seems kind of like the right guy for this moment. Yeah, I know a lot of us were very much for Jim Jordan, hoping that he would prevail and become Speaker of the House. Remember, though, in light of the fact that he didn't, he will continue to lead that Judiciary Committee. He will be a force in public, going after all of the excesses of the Biden administration. And Speaker Mike Johnson, man, he's an eloquent guy. If you're going to be Speaker of the House, if you can string some sentences together and sound like Mike Johnson, you're in the right job. You really are. Here's Mike Johnson today laying out his principles. He says they're conservative principles, but fundamentally principles for the country.
I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but let me concede to you all, I think it's really quintessentially the core principles of our nation. I boil them down to individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the foundations that made us the extraordinary nation that we are. And you and I today are the stewards of those principles. The things that have made us the freest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world. The things that have made us truly exceptional.
Yeah, that's Mike Johnson today. His 7 core principles. I agree wholeheartedly with all of those. And, the left today is furious, which is probably another good sign about Mike Johnson, what his record is and what it will be. They are referring to him as an election denier today. Hilarious coming from the left, which has routinely served up all sorts of people who've denied fair elections in the United States. They've objected to every single presidential election where a Republican won this century. They pretend, of course, like none of that ever happened. Mike Johnson is an attorney. He's spent many years fighting it out for conservative principles and, most importantly, in his case, for religious liberty. He's been a fierce advocate for religious liberty, been involved in all sorts of important litigation on that question at the national level, has worked with what we now know as the organization Alliance Defending Freedom for some time. And so he is a champion on religious liberty, and that's a huge deal in an environment where religious liberty has clearly been under assault, whether you look at the way the churches were shuttered throughout COVID, or you look at the attack on religious faith that's been undertaken by the Biden Justice Department, targeting Catholics for practicing traditional masses. You bet. Going after people who stand outside and pray, prayerfully protesting the abortion of babies. It's wild what's happening right now. Now we have a Speaker of the House who has a long track record of defending religious liberty, and so I'm glad he's in that position. One of the other reasons the left is attacking him today is because they say he has not been in a high leadership position before in Washington, and he's not worth that much money, if you can believe it. I've seen this attack all over the place. He doesn't have that much money. He has debt. He's a man of very modest means. Punchbowl reporting, the political publication this morning, Johnson is a man of exceedingly modest means. The Louisiana Republican is the son of a Shreveport firefighter who was badly injured and disabled on the job. The now congressman worked as a college professor, a conservative talk radio host, and a columnist. But it was his roles on behalf of several religious groups as an attorney and spokesperson that launched his political career. Johnson is married with 4 children. If he's elected, they wrote this morning, Johnson will enter the speakership as a man with exceedingly modest means. Johnson has at least $280,000 in debt and no disclosed assets, they write. Johnson isn't a big fundraiser either, they say, and this is a problem. This is the Punchbowl saying this today. He has $1.1 million on hand in his reelection account and a measly $83,000 in his leadership PAC. Whether you like it or not, the House Republican political machine is powered by 6- and 7-figure contributions to the Congressional Leadership Fund, the GOP leadership-linked super PAC. This is something that Johnson has to begin to think about, and quickly. So the critique here is that he's not worth much. He's got some debt, and the Wall Street Journal dug into this a little bit more. It sounds like he's got a mortgage like a normal person. He's got a mortgage, which is his debt. Wall Street Journal writing today, Mike Johnson's modest financials. They say Johnson has few financial assets, recent disclosures show. Aside from his congressional salary of $174,000, he earned about $29,800 in income from online courses that he taught at Liberty University. That's a good sign, the evangelical Christian institution founded by the late Jerry Falwell Sr. He also has few debts, including a home mortgage valued between $250,000 and $500,000, a small personal loan, and a home equity line of credit. Now, Mike Johnson represents a district in western Louisiana that is the 24th poorest district in the country. The 24th poorest district in the country. I was watching some of the speaker proceedings today via the Washington Post's stream. I typically choose at random some internet stream to watch to consume a lot of this. And I chose the Washington Post today. And one of the lines of criticism that I heard them bandy about was, well, he comes from the 24th poorest district in the country, so he's not really used to being around and raising money from rich people. As if this was a knock against him. And I'm sitting here going, give me more. So he is not beholden to a bunch of rich donors? He is not obsessing over fundraising all of the time? He teaches at Liberty University. He's got a home mortgage. He may have a negative net worth. So I'm supposed to look at all this and go, he's the wrong guy for this job. He's not bought and paid for enough for this gig. In fact, if you want to hear some of the criticism I heard today, this is Paul Kane from the Washington Post. He's a reporter for the Washington Post. And he says that Mike Johnson is totally unqualified to have this position. In no small part because he hasn't held enough leadership positions in Washington yet.
You have somebody here who has no business being Speaker of the House. We have to say that bluntly, clearly. I don't think he would argue that he should be Speaker of the House. He is there simply because he is not hated by anyone. He doesn't have anything close to the approximate experience that you should have before coming into this job.
I'm telling you, is it just me? I mean, I hear something like that and I go, that's what I want. I don't want the insider. I don't want the guy that's been totally corrupted by this city. I don't want the person who's going to instantly sell us out. I want somebody who's going to earnestly and sincerely think in a different way, be conscientious of what's happening with the most impoverished among us, care for American citizens, think about all of us as if we all are from the 24th poorest district in the country. It's amazing. And so you've got, it's funny, I'm looking at like left-wing Twitter accounts. They're all posting all the reasons you should hate this guy, and every single one of them make me like him. You've got Bill Kristol. You remember that guy? He's attacking Mike Johnson today for not being sufficiently pro-Ukraine enough. Which is amazing, because Mike Johnson, I went back and I looked, Mike Johnson voted for a couple of rounds of the first funding for Ukraine, but eventually he pulled back and he said, well, wait a second, we've dumped over $100 billion into this so far, and I'm not thoroughly convinced we know where all of it is going, so maybe we should tap the brakes a bit before we continue accelerating here. Well, that's entirely reasonable. That's like a normal person's reaction. And certainly what you'd expect out of a member of Congress. But apparently that makes him a Putin puppet if you demand some accountability with all the funding we've dumped into that country. And the available record, above and beyond what I've already told you about, is pretty good for him. Pretty good for him. Let's see here. Mike Johnson. Here's Mike Johnson grilling Alejandro Mayorkas for turning America into a giant crime scene.
It is your policies, and because of them, that our entire country is becoming a crime scene. And we are dealing with a humanitarian disaster that would have been unimaginable just 3 or 4 years ago. Because of your policies, the drug cartels are making billions of dollars and building their empires, and they are drowning our streets in fentanyl and other deadly substances, and that has made drug overdoses, as you know, now the #1 cause of death for Americans ages 18 to 45. Our brave Border Patrol and law enforcement agencies and officers are completely overwhelmed, and they are personally endangered. And the rule of law is being trampled underfoot. And the stability and the very sovereignty of our nation is being threatened like never before.
Yeah, so he's not wrong about a single thing he said there. And so if that's the man who takes the helm as Speaker of the House, we will be in an improved position. I've got a lot more for you on the positions he's taken on a number of issues, what he actually believes in, what he said. His time visiting our program, we've interviewed Mike Johnson before. I'll play some of that for you. And it's a weird situation, right? Because Mike Johnson, a lower profile guy, no question. But undoubtedly, he has been an impressive participant in the Republican conference. And anytime we've seen him question, especially any of these Biden administration officials, he's been thoughtful and he's been aggressive. And the hope is here that he continues to do that as Speaker of the House, to animate that role in an important way that helps the country out. Also, I do have details coming up on his legislative agenda out the gate, because they've got to hurry. They've got to rush to start dealing with funding everything in a responsible way and getting Congress in some semblance back on track. Let me take a phone call here. Ryan's in Manassas, line 3. Ryan, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, Representative Johnson dares to have a mortgage. How gauche.
I know.
If this doesn't prove that these people up there in D.C. loathe the average American, especially those of us that might be on the Christian right, I don't know what does. I think it just screams elitism. And it's absolutely disgusting that they would even say such a thing.
Isn't it amazing? So they look at him and they're like, oh, he doesn't raise enough money. Oh, he's the wrong guy for this job. Oh, he hasn't been an insider forever. And they view all of this as some sort of problem, Ryan.
I know. I don't get it. I mean, I guess I do get it, but I can't believe we allow this kind of thing to go on in the country. It's so disheartening. It really is. I
know, it really is. And it also shows you how out of touch our media are, too. I mean, the Washington Post to come along and start just sneering at this guy. Oh, he doesn't even deserve this job. Who the hell are you? What are you even talking about? What do you represent? Who do you represent? It's amazing. Ryan, thank you.
But we have to acknowledge that the federal government is way too big, and it does way too many things, and very little of what it does it do well. The administrative state has grown exponentially over the recent decades, and it, as stated earlier, has consolidated governmental powers in the executive branch. And what that's done then is it's usurped the proper and constitutional role of Congress, our Article I authority over lawmaking and policymaking. And that consolidation of power has become really very dangerous. It's created an administrative state that is out of control.
There's Mike Johnson, now Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson, not too long ago, making the case that the executive branch has grown completely out of control and that we are not following the Constitution. Remember, he has spent decades as an attorney fighting in the trenches for the conservative cause. And most importantly here, he's a conservative a constitutional attorney. He understands the Constitution. How great is it to have somebody at the helm who actually understands a proper interpretation of the Constitution and knows what role the government is supposed to play and that it should be limited? So that's Mike Johnson. Again, encouraging history. So we'll be watching him like a hawk to see if he hews to that as he now takes the helm. Let's take Monty in Monroe, Virginia, line 3. Monty, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
How are you?
I'm good, Monty. What's on your mind?
Hear me?
Yes, sir.
I would like to give out a hearty congratulations to that evil genius from Florida, Representative Matt Gaetz, who got rid of the squish and got in a conservative the way that he wanted, albeit through a rather circuitous route, but he got what he wanted.
Monty, you're one of the few voices in Washington who's going to be willing to say that out loud today because it's just amazing. It's so funny. Is one of the resistance to coming up with a conservative speaker here apparently was that nobody wanted to give Matt Gaetz a victory, but I guess he must have worn them down, and eventually they decided to tap out here. There's no question that Mike Johnson is a very nice guy, but he clearly has beliefs and he stands up for them. That's been his history, at least.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Congratulations to him.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Congratulations, Matt Gaetz. Yeah, in the end, an improved situation, it seems, thanks to that effort. Thank you, Monty. Let's see here. Jeff is in Hagerstown, line 1. Jeff, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. Before I get to my endorsement of Mike Johnson, let me just say that it's just amazing that the depth of the left, how far they will go to slime somebody.
Yeah.
And it's just simply amazing how bad they are. It's incredible, man. So my word to them is, cool story, bro. Have another hit of acid.
Because you must be on drugs if you don't like this guy as speaker. Jeff, thank you. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. All right, more ahead. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on who this guy is, what he believes in, and what he plans to do next now that he's Speaker of the House. Welcome to the big game. Well, good afternoon to you. It is 3:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, well, at the top of the hour, we'll talk to General Keith Kellogg. How close are we to World War III? American troops under attack injured this past week. We'll get into the details there. Senator Ron Johnson is with us from the state of Wisconsin at 4:30 today. We'll talk about the crisis in the Middle East. Also, why is Joe Biden getting checks for $200,000 at a time from his brother, James? What's that all about? And then Curtis Houck is here from the Media Research Center. That's at 5 o'clock from Newsbusters. And then Margot Cleveland joins us from The Federalist at 5:30. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The left very furious that Mike Johnson has become Speaker of the House of Louisiana. And it's so weird. Like, they're so duplicitous. You had the Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, today. Hand the gavel off in the ceremonial gavel handoff, and he had such nice things to say for like 8 seconds about the new speaker, Mike Johnson. Here's that moment.
It is now my solemn honor and responsibility to hand over the People's Gavel here in the United States House of Representatives to a family man, a hardworking man, a Baptist man, a Southern man, a son of a firefighter's household, the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana and the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Yeah, there you go. So he hands it off. And so that's a perfectly nice moment. But look, that moment followed an entire speech where Hakeem Jeffries was just ripping into the Republicans and Mike Johnson and saying they are a threat to democracy and election deniers. Here's Hakeem Jeffries during his remarks just moments before.
Let me conclude with an observation about the state of our democracy. Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. He's doing a great job under difficult circumstances, and no amount of election denialism will ever change that reality. Not now, not ever.
Now, on that issue, I kind of started my thought, and I'd like to finish it now. I started my thought in the last half hour, this idea that Mike Johnson is an election denier, and he tried to overturn the results of the election. Mike Johnson is an attorney with a clear love and affinity for our country and Constitution. Unquestionably so. He's got a long career to establish that fact. And he was one of a number of members of Congress, Republicans, who raised objections to the way the election was conducted in a variety of states across the country, the 2020 election. And there were a range of very deeply reasonable objections to the way that those elections were conducted. It was never before seen, the way these elections were conducted in these states. And so, does that mean that he was attempting to overturn the election? Well, if the outcome of a genuine audit of any of these election systems was that the decision went the other way after establishing what the actual vote tallies were, well, then yes, that would have been the effect of it. But fundamentally, what he was pursuing was a certification that this was all real and on the up and up. In other words, he was kicking the tires, ensuring that our system had democratic soundness. And yet, you often hear from the left that these broad accusations, trying to overturn the election. He was raising challenges, as was his right as a member of Congress. And of course, as I mentioned, Democrats have attempted to do this over and over and over again, every presidential election where a Republican succeeds this century. So this guy, Hakeem Jeffries, is a goofball. He's just making things up. And they're acting as if the true threat to democracy are Republicans who want to make sure that it's intact. So that's lunacy to be expected, but they can't give it up. Even in this moment where he's supposed to show some grace and hand off the gavel, nothing. Also, there's I'm going to play some audio for you from last night. After Republicans did vote to say that Mike Johnson was going to be their guy, to become the speaker designate. This is what Mike Johnson had to say. And then there were some reporters standing around who had some questions that they attempted to throw at these guys. Here's Mike Johnson first and foremost last night.
We want to thank all the press for waiting. It's been quite a process. Democracy is messy sometimes, but it is our system. This conference that you see, this House Republican majority is united.
And sure enough, it was today, very united, a unanimous decision to make Mike Johnson the Speaker of the House. Here's more.
We have a very busy agenda. We have appropriations bills to get through the process, but you're going to see this group working like a well-oiled machine. We owe that to the American people. The people up here have been sent here by the people of this country to do this job, and we are going to do it well. We commit that to you. Thank you for allowing us to go through the process and get to this. It was worth it, and we are going to serve you well.
Yeah, we're going to serve you well. So at the conclusion of his remarks, he says, I'll take a few questions. And one of the questions thrown to him is, why did you try to overturn the election? This is I think this is a reporter from ABC, if I remember correctly.
Mr. Johnson, you helped lead the efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. Will you
Next question. Next question.
Now, I don't know if you could hear it very clearly there, but there's an older woman's voice there. She's like, shut up, she says. That is Republican Congresswoman Virginia Fox. We've had her on the program several times. I like that she's very plain-spoken. She doesn't hold back, and that certainly was the case there last night. So remember, the framing on this question is actually an inversion of the truth. It's to ensure the integrity of the election, not to overturn it. But that's not the way the ABC News /Democratic operative reporter asked last night. But over on CNN, they got the vapors because of all of this. They were going crazy. John King at CNN, left-wing activist himself, had this to say.
And the fact that one Congresswoman Fox said, "Shut up,"
right? Yes. Shut up.
It's anti-democratic. Yes. They are anti-democratic.
Virginia Fox, have you ever seen her? She's like 4'8". She's not She's not this like huge looming figure. She's not going to beat anybody's butt to the ground. She's like, shut up, she says. So now she's a full-blown fascist. In the eyes of CNN, she's a full-blown anti-democratic fascist.
And the fact that one Congresswoman Fox said, "Shut up,"
right? Shut up.
It's anti-democratic. Yes. They are anti-democratic. They simply are. That's a fact. And they're anti-free speech.
This guy's not a journalist. Not a journalist. Whatever he's pretended to be in the past, to sit there and say they're anti-democratic. Meanwhile, his party is absolutely running a tyrannical operation against their political opponents, whether it's hassling them at school board meetings, straight up arresting them, throwing them in solitary confinement, going after parents, going after churchgoers, going after people who want to pray for and protest against the genocide of young babies in the United States. All of them, they're all targets. And then when they're targeted by criminals, a la the fire bombings and graffiti at crisis pregnancy centers and churches, there's no help to be found from the American left because they think those actions are legitimate. Get your own house in order, dude. He's like, because Virginia Fox said shut up, they're anti-democratic. They simply are. There's no question about it.
Anti-free speech. They're anti-question. They don't like questions that they don't like. They don't want to answer questions that they don't like. Well, sorry. Welcome to America. That's the great charm of the American experiment, that we ask questions, that people get to ask these questions.
Yeah. So where is the defense of the New York Post? Where is that? Like, have you ever seen John King come out and say, the White House really should let the New York Post ask that question? Or are we just okay with shutting down Stephen Nelson every time he wants to know even the smallest thing about corruption allegations involving the President of the United States? Are we just okay with that? Is that the idea? Please, spare us, John King. So that's the way things are going down today. The left is angry, which is probably a good sign for the country. They're very furious about all of this. More in a moment on some of these flashbacks on the things that Mike Johnson believes in and what he intends to do next. Let's get Lisa from Rockville in here, line 4. Lisa, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon. I just want to say thanks to God that Mike Johnson is our new Speaker of the House. Recently, Hakeem Jeffries called Jim Jordan, quote, our national nightmare, unquote. Our true national nightmare is Hakeem Jeffries, and he has been defeated. Hurrah. The Islamo-terrorist communist Hakeem Jeffries, who probably loves Hamas, is the loser. And thank God and thanks to the, for once, clear-thinking Republican members of Congress for electing Mike Johnson to be Speaker of the House.
Well, amen to that. Yeah, it seems like the right choice. And it was funny, actually, Lisa. Weird. I wouldn't say funny necessarily, but just strange to see. Hakeem Jeffries did say some stuff about, we need to support our ally Israel today. But the cameras in the room did not show me the faces of the Democrats. I wasn't able to see what the Democrat conference looked like when he said that, because I can guarantee there were people who stayed in their seats, refused to clap, who didn't want to support Israel because they are supporting, as you pointed out, Hamas. So that's what's going on that side of the aisle. The great defenders of democracy standing with the terrorists here, Lisa. But you're right, Hakeem Jeffries, to your point, hurrah, defeated today in that speaker vote. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
All right, let's see here. We've got Jason in Kensington calling in line 2. Jason, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, good day, Vince.
Hey, sir.
Just the fact that Hakeem Jeffries had to come out and announce that about the election just shows me that they're still very insecure about their result. I mean, Democrats are very obvious in their overprojection of their thoughts. They obviously are not easy with that, and they've got to overproject themselves, which shows me that they're not all there with that election. They're not sure about themselves. So, why even mention that?
Yeah, it's like kind of like the lady doth protest too much, right? It's like you may be overemphasizing, how everything was on the up and up. What are you hiding exactly? And you don't have to look that far. I mean, look at I think it's America First Legal this week is calling on the Federal Elections Commission to launch a full-blown investigation into the meddling in the 2020 election by the intel community, which is an obvious thing. And, the left likes to stand up there and pretend like, these are the institutions that they're going to hold accountable. No, they're in bed with these institutions and screwing with our election system and completely anti-democratic actions that they're taking. And so that's why they keep on insisting that they're on the side of democracy.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we weren't trying to overturn. We just wanted to get some answers. That's all it was. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. They do it every election. I mean, when we turn around and do it, they crack the beef about it.
We do it once, and Jamal Bowman pulls the fire alarm. Thank you very much, Jason. I appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate the call here. Let's see. I've got Richard calling in from Manassas, line 3. Richard, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. You know, it's funny. Someone needs to remind Hakeem Jeffries, Donald John Trump won the 2016 election. He's an election denier himself. He's a threat to democracy by his own standards.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, Hakeem Jeffries did claim in 2018, to your point, that Donald Trump was an illegitimate president. In fact, he posted on Twitter, the twice impeached former president ordered House Republicans to stop Tom Emmer and elevate a top election denier, he said recently. But then others pointed back at his old tweet, and he said, quote, this is what he said in 2018, the more we learn about the 2016 election, the more illegitimate it becomes. America deserves to know whether we have a fake president in the Oval Office. Hashtag Russia interference. Says now a guy, top Democrat, one of the top Democrats in the country, a full-blown election denier, to your point. So thank you, Richard. That's an excellent reminder, sir.
You bet. Thanks.
Really appreciate that. Let us see here. We've got Donna. Donna, you've just been all over WMAL today. Donna in Frederick, line 4. Hello, Donna.
Hi, I love WMAL, and you guys do such an amazing job every day, and it's definitely worth the time. I wanted to make 2 quick comments. The first one is, when I hear the left use the term democracy, I'm thinking communism is really what they're worried about, truth be told on that one. That's my opinion. And then the second thing that a lot of people complained about the process, but you know what it did? It focused the attention of the American people on those Republicans in name only, the big spender class. That's important going forward. And I think that's why we are where we are right now. I can't wait to see how this unfolds.
Yeah, me neither. And look, this is not, I am pleased today. It should be obvious in our coverage here during this hour. I'm pleased with this outcome of Mike Johnson. But the obvious stipulation here, and I know you share my view on this, Donna, is that, okay, now you've got a position of power and leadership. We will hold you accountable. We're going to keep our eyes on you. And that doesn't matter who you are. You could be as pure as the driven snow. But the reality is we've got to keep an eye on you and hold you accountable to make sure that you're actually doing the business of the American people. And so Mike Johnson will be subject to that as well.
Yes, and the important word you just said, accountable. Think about money and spending, because that's what it all boils down to.
Amen. All right, Donna, thank you, as always. Excellent work today.
I just want to congratulate Mike Johnson. He will be a great Speaker of the House, and we were very happy to help. I've known him for a long time. He's a tremendous leader, a tremendous man, comes from a wonderful place, Louisiana.
Yeah, Donald Trump very excited about this, happy with Mike Johnson, giving him a big thumbs up today, now Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson. I do have a bunch of other audio for you on Mike Johnson. Let's see here. Here he is on the issue of so-called gender-affirming care. This is the mutilation of children.
I'm going to speak the truth here plainly, and I think the vast majority of the American people understand and agree with what I'm going to say. What you've just heard there is a little sample of barbarism. This is the mutilation of children, and it should be prohibited by our law. This so-called gender-affirming care is anything but affirming and caring, and the language matters. This is adults deciding to permanently alter the bodies of children who do not have the capacity to make life-altering decisions on their own.
So on the issue of the unborn, of our babies, here's what Mike Johnson told me in an interview in May of last year.
The unborn child is not a human to these people, and it describes exactly where they're coming from. They don't recognize the humanity of a child in the womb. And we know, and we pointed out in the hearing, of course, look, babies in the womb deserve legal protection. They possess the same basic human right to life that is described in our Declaration and that all the rest of us enjoy. And You know, we pointed out, look at unborn children at 6 weeks have a heartbeat.
Yeah, so Mike Johnson, very strong on that issue. Also very supportive of the impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden.
Mr. Speaker, barring declarations of war, impeachment is the most awesome power that Congress has. It shouldn't be a threat. It shouldn't be a political exercise. It's certainly not a pledge to be made on the campaign trail. This is the most serious business that we can engage in. No one should want to impeach a president. You can't take any pleasure in that. But after months of blocked investigations by agencies in this administration, it became clear that an impeachment inquiry was the only course of action to complete our necessary and important investigations. And let me explain why. Because there's been some confusion and some controversy about this. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 irrefutable facts that have taken us to this point. Number 1, President Biden lied directly to the American people. Number 2, President Biden's family and their associates profited millions through shell companies. Number 3, President Biden's federal agencies are stonewalling our legitimate congressional inquiry. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, it is. Speaker Mike Johnson now at the helm. Coming up, Keith Kellogg, the general, will be with us, and Senator Ron Johnson ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.